Okay, so as I go through the video here, you're going to find out more or less which controller I prefer. But before we do that, let us describe some of the functions of the two LCDs, shall we? Now on this side here, we have the e-bike controller, commonly used in the e-bike world for scooters, e-bikes, motorcycles, ATVs. And if you look up here, we have a bunch of cables, about 10 to be precise. And there's a lot of wires. Moving up here, we have the whole sensors. We go to throttle, low and high brake, phases, one output motor, power, LED screen, very important. If you have a controller with LED screen, it's a good feature because you are able to eliminate some of the cables like the lights, the reverse braking, the cruise control. So it's a good feature. And what I mean when I say an LED screen, I'm talking about one of these. This is a SA66. And what you do is connect it to the LED screen cable here. And basically, you have control of your controller from here. And you have this power button, you turn it on, and you turn on the controller and the LCD screen as well. So from here, you can control lights, use speed, and depending on the LCD screen, many other things. So it's a good thing because at the end, you eliminate a lot of cables and you just have one connected to the controller, which is a good feature. Now, moving on, the pedal assist and the cable and the self-learning cable. This is a good feature here and very important because I believe this cable teaches the controller in what direction the motors are moving. If you connect these two, your motors will rotate one way, and if you don't plug them, connect them again, you teach the controller that to move the motors the opposite way, clockwise and counterclockwise. And I believe those two cables set the controller with the whole sensors and the phases of the motors. I believe that's what it does, but I'm not sure. In my next video, I'm going to try to connect this controller step by step and try to make it work and see the travels I go just to make one motor run. So stay tuned for that video. Check it out. Now moving on here, we have the lights, wires, and on the left hand side here, we have some of the missing features that this controller doesn't have, which is the EBS brake. I'm not sure what the difference between the EBS and the low and high brakes are. I believe these two here, it cuts the power to the motors at once versus this one, it sort of coats the motors down. It doesn't shut them down all at once. I believe that's what it does. Now we have the alarm system, the 3-speed switch, which is a switch when you don't have the LED screen. You have to integrate one of these to your controller if it doesn't come on LED screen. So you can see 1, 2, 3 speeds, right? You can change your speed of your vehicle. Or you can use one of these, which you can use it for your left and right lights, headlights, EBS brake here, or a horn, whatever you want to do. You can use it for electronic brake. This is a momentary brake. You can just push it, brake, release, right? That is if your LED doesn't come with, your controller doesn't come with LED screen. And as far as the throttle, let me show you, they come with thumb throttles or twisting throttles, they call them, right? The ones for motorcycles. Or you can put in a pedal throttle here, depending on what you are powering, what you're using it for, I guess. Now we have a cruise control wire over here as well missing, and we have a reverse feature wire. And on e-bikes, I guess you don't need reverse because a bike or a scooter, you can just lift and turn it around and off you go. Now on a go-kart, that might be a good feature to have because you might need it, right? Reverse function. But this one doesn't have it. Anyway, moving on to the ESC. You can see less cables right away. And this particular ESC has a 2 motors, 1, 2, has antenna for the remote, power meter, on and off switch, power, main power. Now with the remote here, you can control some of the features that this e-bike controller does. They come integrated within the remote. For instance, you move the toggle switch here forward, you go forward, you pull back, you activate the electronic brake system, and you close down the motors. It has indicators, LED lights here that tells you the power of your battery, like a second backup, right, of the power meter. It also tells you the power of your batteries here on the remote, if it's charged or not. Has an on-off switch button, and it has another button here for reverse, forward, reverse. So you can see these two ESCs are pretty much comparable, except with its differences. More cables, less cables, just a little bit extra features, kind of the same features, functions. Now when it comes to power, this ESC here is rated for 36 volts at 1,300 watts per motor. Now that's what it says, but I don't think it does it. I think the amount mostly gets is 750 per motor. I conducted a test once, and at full speed, I was able to pull about 16 amps per motor. Okay, so even though I use this ESC with 48 volts, because the capacitors are rated for 63 volts, that's why I'm able to use 48 volts. And the website says that you can even put 48 volts on it, even though it's designed for 36. Now on the other side, the e-bike, this is at 48 volts and 36 volts at 1,000 amps with 20 amps and 30 amps. Now notice it only comes with one output motor, and that's the difference with this too. But this ESC here, you can get it with one output motor, which is basically half of this ESC over here, all this. And comes with the remote and power, all its little devices here. And you can basically just power one e-bike on the rear wheel with one motor. It'll function just fine because it has a lot of power. Now in this one here, you are able to put two motors, parallel them on this one output. And on one of my videos, if you check my channel, you'll see that I connected them and it worked just fine. But I used, instead of using hub motors, I used 6374 belt motors from the skateboard world, and I was able to run them. Now, that was a bench test, which a bench test is different than an actual load test, right? Putting it on an e-bike or a go-kart, I'm not sure how the controller will handle two motors with only one output. It probably will run it, but you'll need a lot more battery power to sustain that voltage. So at the end, if it doesn't really work, or if it's killing my battery power, I will need to upsize the wattage at least 2,000 watts, which means usually double the size of this controller. This is a 6-inch. I'll probably jump to a 10 by 2.5. This one here by 6, you know. It's a lot bigger, a lot bulkier. And depending where you're gonna use it, if it is on an e-bike, it's just not gonna look okay, because it will be difficult to find storage for it within the bike. I'm not sure if you've seen those DIYers on YouTube using one of these e-bikes for their conversion of their bikes to electric bikes, and they usually clip them on the frames somehow, and you can see it, and you can see the wires all over, and you know, and the bigger you go, the worse it looks. Plus, the bigger you go, you're gonna need a heavier battery, bigger one. It just does, to me, that just doesn't look quite right. Now, on the other hand, you can use two of these e-bike controllers which makes it even worse because now you need two. If you need more power, 1,500, 2,000, you're going to need bigger ones, more wires. That's going to look awful. And then you're going to need more battery power, bigger batteries. It's going to look even awful. So that's the reason I don't really like, per se, this for e-bikes. Go-karts might be good, I guess, because you might have a way to hide them there somewhere, but I never tried them. Why would I do that when I can even use these smaller ones here? So at the end, the only thing I don't like about this ESC so far is that I can only use this remote control. I cannot use an electric throttle. Now, at least I don't know how to use it. Maybe there is a way to use it. If someone out there knows how to use one, incorporate one of this in ESCs, please let me know. I would like to experiment with that. I would like to learn how to do it. Yeah, it'll be interesting. But I know some of the other ESCs, VESC that I call, you can incorporate an electronic throttle into the ESC. They have a way to do it. But on this particular one, you cannot, because this one is already set for you. There's nothing you can do to it. You're not able to program it versus the other ones you're able to program it. Set the voltage, the amperage you want on the motor, set the type of braking power you want, low, medium, high. You can do that on those, but those cost about $500, more expensive. This one is what you see is what you get. Now on the other side, on the e-bikes, this one what you see is what you get. You generally come with one motor output. If you're gonna jump to a big controller with more power, they generally offer some programming where you can change some things. I'm not sure what, probably motors, amperage. And still they only come with one motor output. I don't think I've ever seen e-bikes controllers with two motor outputs still. If you want to design your project with two motors or one, you want to be able to do it with this type of controller. Excuse me. Now, the reason I like this one again is because it's a smaller device, has less wires. A lot of the features are integrated in the remote control, which you can do just as this. This is 4 by 3 inches. The thickness is about an inch, maybe less than an inch, 3/4. Now, if you buy a bigger wattage ESC, they generally come the same. They don't change the size. The thickness might be a little bit, maybe not. Some are even smaller than this. And they have more power. And they have more features than this one too that you can do. And this one you can buy them dual and you can buy them single, whatever you want. And some, like I said, you can program, and this and some others you don't. But you have more diversity here, I guess, more options. Now, the weight is less, right? If you're going to design some type of electrical device, like an e-bike, convert something like that, a scooter, you want to minimize the weight. You do not want to add weight to your electrical project because you're killing yourself, because you have to account for your weight, the weight of the driver. Now, I've seen some DIYers using some BLDC motors, such as this one's right here. This thing weighs a ton. I believe they weigh the same as a 24-volt battery of a vehicle. That's a lot of weight. So you want to eliminate these motors. That's why I use the 7364 motors, the small ones for the skateboards or my go-karts, because they weigh less. So if I use the same ones on an e-bike, that would be even better instead of using these big motors, right? And then I've seen people using big batteries too, instead of using smaller batteries, smaller motors, smaller batteries. Anyway, so size, wires, right? If you want to enclose this ESC, you can use a small compartment versus this. ESC, you're gonna have to use two of this, maybe one but bigger. Now you need a bigger compartment. You still have this whole bunch of wires, right? Each one connected to one wire outside, wherever it's going in the bike. It's a whole mess. So this is the reason why I prefer this. You eliminate a lot of cables and space and the weight, which at the end, to me, is better. By the way, one more thing with this controller, just in case I forgot to mention it here in the video, about the motor wires. This controller is much easier to make the motors work, because all you have to do is connect the motors. If they come with the same color combination, green, blue, and yellow, you connect both the same. This controller is programmed to rotate the motors in an opposite way, which means this one counterclockwise and this one clockwise. Since they are designed for skateboards, if you put yourself behind a skateboard, you'll notice that to go forward, one motor is on one side and the other motor is on the other side. So you flip the motor, right, for this tire and this tire. So one motor is going clockwise, right? And the other one is running counterclockwise. And when you connect this ESC, even though you use the same color coding, the ESC already is programmed to run this motor clockwise and the other one counterclockwise, which is a good thing. And if you want to change the rotation of the motors, all you have to do is disconnect two of these leads, switch them, and then you run this clockwise and this clockwise, or counterclockwise and this one counterclockwise, whatever you want to do. So you can still use this on an e-bike, because e-bikes you only need clockwise rotation depending on where you install your motors. Now, another thing about this ESC is that since they're designed for belt motors or hub motors, you have to be careful which one you buy. But I believe I can run a ESC that runs hub motors with belt motors. Belt motors meaning VLDC motors, right? And I believe the only problem will be the Hall sensors. If you switch them, you use a hub on a belt motors and a belt motors on a hub motors, the problem would be the Hall sensors. But since these motors can run the motors without the Hall sensors just fine, then you don't really need the Hall sensors feature, and you can still run either or in any motor, at least on the BLDC motors or the belt motors that I use. I'm able to use this ESC to run this motor just fine. So that's another convenience, less travel, less hectic. And that's why I'm gonna show you how to run this with one motor, so you see what do I go through to run just one motor. It's kind of challenging doing it this way versus this way. You just connect them in and they pretty much work. Okay. So stay tuned for my next video, which be the self-learning feature, I guess. All right. And that should be coming up soon, so that way we experience how to power a motor from beginning to end with this particular controller. Have fun, stay tuned. Thank you.